I am the author of a book called The Boda Boda Driver, a Tanzanian Experience. I have not always been an author. I started out as a regular person. I worked 32 years in Manhattan as a legal secretary. And I think that it was there that I was able to gain the experience and knowledge and skills to create a book. I don't know how each of you have gone through your journey of becoming an author, but for me, it was something that was in me, but never did I have a chance to explore it fully. Back in March of 2020, for me and for like most other people, my company went on a work from home program. And I found that even though the idea of working from home seemed kind of exciting to me because the attorneys used to do it all the time, I found that it wasn't exciting for me. I wanted to be at work doing hands-on work, and I could not do that. That gave me the opportunity to think about what it is I wanted to do going forward with the rest of my life, because I felt like I had reached a point where I had worked hard enough, did all I could possibly do, saved up enough money. And during the lockdown, I decided it was time for me to get out of Dodge. And so I boarded a plane and went to Tanzania. While I was there, this was my first time ever being in Africa. So it was a big change for me. And even though I had seen a lot of YouTubers showing and showcasing all the beauty of Africa, it was still a very new and exciting experience for me. While there, I noticed that the mode of transportation to get around was on a motorcycle, which they call a Boda Boda, B-O-D-A, And essentially what it is was there are groups of men on motorcycles and they take you from one border of town to the next. And so you can hop on a motorcycle and tell them where you're going and they'll take you to one border. And if you're going a little bit further within the town, someone else would take you a little bit further. And so it's called the Boda Boda Driver. Now, over the years, I did like to travel. Like one of the other sisters said, I've been to various places and I would always write notes about my experiences while I was there. And most of my notes were written in poetic form. And so that I did not realize was the start of my writing children's books. And then I decided while I was there that I would start to look for someone who could assist me with getting my book off the ground, because I wanted to move in the direction that I had been hoping I could move into, but was too busy to do so while working in a law firm. It just so happened that my Airbnb host was a young lady who was friends or still is friends with the gentleman who is the author, who is the illustrator of my book. His name is Jeremiah Nixon, a very young and talented man who quickly caught on to the vision of what I was writing and decided to hop on board and assist me with making this book happen. One of the reasons why I decided to write the book was because even now, it is still very unclear to most Black Americans what Africa is. And if there's anyone here on the panel that's a Black American that have been to Africa, I would like to know, and please share with me or with us where you have gone. But for most of us, it's still a place that is unknown. One of the things that I realize is because it's very expensive. Now I can hop over to St. Kitts, St. Thomas, San Juan, or the other islands. I can hop over to the UK if I wanted to, and Spain, and the prices are very reasonable. Coming to Africa is a totally different situation, and also it's a very long flight. The average flight on most cases is about 14 hours, and then you're not quite there yet. So one of the reasons why I decided to write the book about the Boda Boda driver is I thought it was important for parents to read to their children the story of a place in Africa. It's something that I think needs to be instilled in our children at a very early age so they can have a more open mind and form a love of Africa. And then when they decide, when they're at an age where they can travel, or even if their parents take them on a trip and they say, we're going away, and they say where, and they say a country in Africa, because we know it's a continent, they would be excited. So in most cases, we go to Florida, we do Disney, we do Six Flags, we do Jersey, we do places like that. And actually just thinking about that, I know recently on Roland Martin News, he had reported an incident where our children of color were being mistreated or ignored at certain areas where there are other children around. I think it was, I forgot the name of the place that it was at, but the children had been snubbed by the characters in this playground. And my first thought was, we should take our children to Africa. We need to take them to an environment where they see people that look just like them, that can understand them, that can appreciate them, and welcome them home. So again, I decided to write the book about the Boda Boda driver, just to have a small experience of my experience when I was there in Tanzania. If you don't mind, I would like to read just in the front cover of the book, the couple of front page. It says that in Arusha, Tanzania, that's where I stayed, in Arusha, which is on the countryside. The best way to get around is on a Boda Boda. A Boda Boda driver is a motorcycle driver that takes passengers from one section of town to the other section. I was fascinated with this mode of transportation and decided to write about it. And then you'll see here is a map of Africa. And then this gold color here shows you where Tanzania is located. That's in East Africa. Then I'll go ahead and read for you a couple of the pages. When riding a Boda Boda, he is never alone. Oh, you know what? I skipped a page. Yes, here's the first page. Sorry, here we go. Except when the driver starts his day from home. When riding a Boda Boda, he is never alone. He waits under a tree talking with friends until a passenger arrives, and then the journey begins. I'm going to stop there. I'll explain to you a couple of things that I noticed when I was in Tanzania. Maybe some of you would understand what I'm talking about. I remember a lot of times watching PBS or Channel 13, and they would show pictures of Africa. And they would show young men on motorcycles. And some of them would have handkerchiefs over their mouth and noses. But they called them bandits, because they looked like maybe they were up to trouble. You know, when we first started wearing masks over our faces and we were going to stores and store owners were kind of concerned. And so they were like, we want to take the masks off. But these were regular people who had hardworking jobs and they had on masks to keep their face covered up from any dirt and bugs that were flying in. They picked up regular people, business women, young women, men, the elderly. I've seen them carry a tray of eggs on their hand. I've seen people on their cell phone without having to hold on. I think the average person who's gotten onto a motorcycle would probably grab onto someone real tight or something. They barely hold on with their hands. If you hold on, you usually hold on in the back and hold on. But I've seen people, I don't know if they have strong interior legs or not, but they just have a nice grip and they get to where they have to go. They're weaving in and out of traffic. It could be, this is normally what we see when we see Africa, that heavy traffic. And the Boda Boda drivers are right there in the midst and their passengers are in the midst and no one is concerned and they get to where they get to go very safely. And then I'll just tell you the last part at the end of the book, because this is my experience. I wrote, before I leave for America, I'll give it a try and sit like the ladies do. And I wonder if you were in Africa, would you ride a Boda Boda too? And then in the back, there is a glossary of words that are in Swahili. These are words that you would generally learn once you're there. You'll find that in the African countries where English is not the primary language, they do encourage you to learn the language of the country. And so words like mambo, meaning hello, and bua, meaning all is good or well, and marahaba, which is a greeting used when a young person is greeting a significantly older person. And asante sana, which means thank you. So once again, this is my book. It's called The Boda Boda Driver, B-O-D-A, B-O-D-A, The Boda Boda Driver, a Tanzanian experience. I am presently parked in West Africa called the Gambia, which is where I met Makonnen. And I am in the process of starting another book of my experience here. It's called Essa the Horseman, a Gambian experience. And so I'm hoping to hook up with an artist here, if possible, and start on my second book in my series called Come to Africa. It's my Come to Africa series, and The Boda Boda Driver is my first book, and the second one will be coming next year. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, thank you, Makonnen, for inviting me on to the Black Book Show and this tour and the podcast. I am extremely nervous, so bear with me. And yes, so I am from Delaware in the States. I'm 26 years old. I wrote this book throughout my life. I treated poetry like my diary, like journaling. I never really consciously thought that I was going to be an author, or that's what I was doing, creating a book. It wasn't until I sought out therapy and was guided by my therapist when I started to share with her my pieces, that she was like, I have a story for people out there, young adults, the Black community, to basically pay more attention to our mental health. This book is about mental health, addiction, family drama, life issues, you name it. I went through it. throughout my life. And I created beauty out of pain. So basically what led me to create this book was a multitude of support. I would share only really with my mom that I would create, you know what I mean? Nobody in my family, other than maybe my cousin or my grandmother, knew that I even wrote poetry. And once I shared with my therapist this, I started to think, because I was still in act of addiction with alcohol, that maybe I should put more emphasis on mental health, and maybe I should put more emphasis on alcoholism and be able to put it in, you know, something that is a self-reflection book for people that are my age and younger, and who, because, you know, I don't know about y'all, but I live behind that stereotype that, you know, we don't need therapy as Black people, like, and we kind of deter from that process of getting our help properly by people we don't know. And with that, I just really wanted to break that stereotype with this book. I wanted to target younger people because it starts with us to change the things that were, you know, taught to us by generations before us. And I do truly believe, had I took my mental health a whole lot more serious, I wouldn't probably had to go down paths that I went down. But that's okay. And I was able to self-reflect on myself and finish my book in rehab. Most of my book, like towards the middle, I started to write on pen and paper at rehab, well, in rehab. And majority of the book was written when I was a young adult, when I was like, I say I started writing probably when I was able to make sense of my thoughts. So I would say probably around 9 or 10, I would write little letters to my mom and hide them in my panty drawer, where I know she was going to bring out my clothes in the morning. And I would try to basically talk to her in my own way of articulation so that she would understand where I was coming from. And every morning that I would do that, she would wake me up with, you know, tears in her eyes. And, you know, we would talk, and then I would start my day, you know, more understood, more heard. And so with that, with the thought that, you know, okay, I can reach people with my words, and people confide in me, and people come to me for my words, why not devote myself to creating a book of self-reflection through my experiences? And so that's exactly what I did. And so I do want to read the back. I wasn't going to, but I am going to. So this piece of this stanza is in my book to come. This is a series. It's called the Inside series. My next book, I do not know when that's coming out, because I'm still walking in that journey. So the next book is called Inside, Regard the Heart. This one is Inside, Nurturing the Mind, Body, and Spirit. So it goes, unannounced, though the presence will be noticed. Walk softly, for you'll still imprint the sand beneath your feet. Carry yourself, although it's new, it's none less than royalty. Demand not for respect you deserve. It'll fall in place from the ones that deserve. And I wrote that with the thought of, you know, I used to always think that I had to announce my presence when I walked in a room. I used to think that, you know, I had to leave an imprint when I left out that room. But what I've come to realize is that when I walk in a room, I am the light in that room, and I don't have to overexert. And within this book, that's literally the climax of me coming to that realization that me, Anaya Pollard, carries such, how can I say it? Such inspiration that people feed off of that. And I just really, I don't even push this book how I should. You know what I mean? Like I'm walking in a restoration phase. And this book here is so important to my journey because of the simple, even just the imagery on the front cover of me and my darkness leaving out of me and God protecting me through it all. Like I gave my epigraph to my artist, and I told her to create what you see from my words. And this is what she got out of it. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I want to share with you a piece in my book. It's called Anaya Ture Pollard. And this will be my wrap up. So it goes like this. I can't autocorrect my mistakes, so you're proud. I glance at the reflection, and I am proud of how far I've come. I worked hard to fight back against my mentality, all for you to shove down my throat all the wrongs that have come by the hands of me. Me, hold accountability, tried to skip around the beat on repeat, my dull apologies. Though to you may sound rehearsed, just another sweet song I've sung. So I'm accountable, but for how selfish I've been. But to me, it took time to start claiming my flowers, time as the seed stood still, waited. I had become rotten, but the flowers, my flowers, rose and broke soil. Rehab, 30 days, 720 hours of restoration of the mind, body, and soul. I began to allow God to wash me clean, shatter the mirror I spoke shame to, tear down the statue I had known to be self, restore in me an image of you. I wanted to be clean. I wanted clarity. I wanted to be who he deemed me to be. I was hungry, worked the system, found my pressure, applied full throttle. It was in me, grew stronger and even stronger. Added humility to my roster. Think before you speak. It was in me, still thinking before I move. Perfection is to know insanity, removing all negative things from me. I'm not perfect, but it was in me. As I walk in my truth, I lighten the ground, an aura surrounds me. I am seen. I gleam, no longer bound to alcoholic captivity. I am Anaya Pollard. In God, I've been set free. This is only the beginning. Welcome inside. So I basically, throughout my whole entire active addiction, I was longing to be invisible. And with that, I obtained it. And it's true that what we speak is what we consume. What we hear, we consume it. And with me wanting to be invisible, I became invisible. And my voice was hushed. And basically, through my walk, I refound my voice. And thank you for letting me share.
Okay, hello, good morning or good evening for those that are not in the United States. I know it's morning here, so good morning for those in the United States. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate that. And so my name is Karen Vaughn, and I started off in healthcare. I'm actually still a healthcare professional. And I transitioned into a marketing and public relations arena. After that, I've worked for like nonprofits, like Florida nonprofit organizations, which is affiliated with the greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber. And, you know, I actually traveled a lot in my medical professional, not overseas. I have family overseas because my family is so, it's so diverse. I grew up here in South Florida, but I used to live in New York as well. That's why I was asking that lady before where in New York she lived, because I was in Hollis, Queens. And so my background is of Caribbean descent, Jamaican descent. So what happened is my dad is from there. And so he actually married a lady from the UK. And so that's how I ended up having family over there. So I have been over there. And so, I mean, my background is so diverse. You'd never believe it, but I have family all over the world, basically, except for Africa. Well, I probably do have in Africa too, but I've never been there. So I don't know, and I'd love to go there. I'd maybe like to collaborate with that young lady, the first one that came on, because I really do want to, go to Africa, and I'm sure we all have roots there, and I really want to discover more about my roots and everything. So I'm willing to go over to Africa and find out more about that country. And so my book, basically, how I started my book is during the COVID period. As I mentioned, I was traveling in the medical field, and like maybe 2 months before COVID hit, I just didn't want to travel anymore. And so being that I had, my marketing PR degree, I decided to go back into that. And when everything kind of closed down, I started writing this book about 2 years ago. And I just kept putting it down. And I said, this wasn't the right time for me. And then everything, I got consumed with my job and with everything else. So I never got a chance to finish it. Now, during COVID, of course, when COVID hit and everything was closed down, and I had stopped traveling because I didn't want to travel anymore, especially with what was going on. In the beginning, we didn't know what was happening. And I didn't want to be on the front line. So I decided to finish up my book. And The Essence of a Woman, I felt that I could tell my story that would hopefully inspire others to realize that they could achieve anything that they, make up their minds to do. I wanted to motivate people, because my motto in life is that our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Now, I got married at a very young age. I went through a series of abuse. You may not think so by looking at me, but yes, my marriage only lasted for 1 year. And so I've been through a lot of things in my life that I felt during that period of the COVID, period. I felt like there were a lot of women out there, not just women, because people say, well, your book is only for women. It's called The Essence of a Woman. No, it's for everyone, because I want to encourage people and motivate them and inspire them that, to know that no matter what you go through in life, you can always pick up yourself and you can become who you want to be in life. And that's why I look forward to a new chapter in my life now. And I'm so invigorated, because I know what I've been through, and I know what I can inspire others to do and motivate others to do. And this is what kind of drove me to write my book. Because I know whatever you've been through, a lot of women during COVID, they were at home, they had kids, they were going through, some periods of depression. Like that young lady was saying, a lot of times we as Black people, we don't want to talk about mental issues. We feel that when we speak about things like depression, abuse, whatever, people are going to say, oh, they're crazy. You know what I mean? You don't want people to feel that you're kind of crazy, especially for the men, Black men. They don't want to go and get help and seek help. And I've seen it so many times that, they need to speak about what they've been through in life, especially even when you go back to your childhood experiences. You realize that a lot of the things that you're going through now in life, especially with even young men, it's developed because of what they've been through in their childhood days. A lot of them have maybe grew up without dads. They've been through abuse, they've been through all these things, they've seen so much in their lives. And then now as an adult, it kind of comes out, in their relationships, in everything, and so this is the reason why I even went back to school. And now I'm finishing up a master's degree in mental health and counseling, because this is what I feel I can do to help others, especially in the Black community, to help them deal with all these issues that we all find ourselves in right now. And so, I hope that my book here, The Essence of a Woman, will encourage and empower others to go out there and maybe just speak about, what they have been through in life, like for a long period of time, like the young lady just said a while ago. I mean, I'm not 26 years old. I'm a little bit older than her, but still, about 20 years older than her. But I still, encourage us all to go out there. I don't know if you've ever heard Oprah speak, but when Oprah told about her story, she said that she kept a lot of stuff inside of her for like such a long period of time. I don't know if you have all ever listened to Oprah Winfrey and her story and what had happened to her before. And she kept it for maybe up until into her adult years. She never spoke about it until she became like Oprah, who she was now. And so this is a lot of the things that I think we as Black people, we always just hold everything inside, and especially us as women, because we're nurturers, and we feel like we have to be like always in the forefront. We have to protect our men. We have to be such strong women. You ever heard them say like a Black woman is always a strong woman, which we are. But we feel that we always have to always be so strong and so nurturing, and then sometimes the Black men don't understand us because they feel that, oh, she's just like she's so strong, she's intelligent, she's she doesn't need a man, why is she out there? But that's not it. It's just that we have to be strong sometimes. This is how we were brought up. I've seen my mother being strong, when she's going to work as a single mother, going out there working 2-3 jobs, just to provide for her family. I mean, my mother was a professional. She was a nurse, but still she was single, and, she still had her kids, and she still provided for us, working there in New York in the snow, falling, down in the ice. And that's the reason why we even came to Florida, because she said, I can't take these winters anymore, because, working in a hospital, you got to go, whether it's snowing, hailing, whatever it's doing out there, winter storms, you got to be at work, so this is something I saw my mother do, and I know she's a strong woman. And so I, in turn, am a strong person. I mean, I had a child at a young age. She's older now, of course. And I had to bring her up on my own. So I myself was a single mother. And so I know the struggles that women have gone through. And this is the reason why I wrote this book, because I want to encourage all women out there, and not only women, but men too, to know that no matter what they go through, they can always overcome, their struggles. And I'm sure that maybe a lot of women out there can relate to what I'm saying, because a lot of us have been through all of this, but we just are scared to speak about it. We're scared to speak about maybe, our bad relationships that we kind of knew that we shouldn't have gotten into, but then we got into it. And we're just scared to speak about all these things a lot of times. And so I decided that this was my time during the period of COVID for me to come out and say who I am, and write this book, The Essence of a Woman. You can actually find it on Amazon, and I'll put my website in the chat as well, so you can actually pull up my website. I don't want to give too much about the book away, but this is what the book is basically about. It's not, it's specifically, a lot of things, relate to women, but it's not just for women, as I said. And it's my goal to help women understand their uniqueness in society, and how important it is for us to paint a clear identity of ourselves. And this allows us to evolve and take the necessary steps that we need to take to improve ourselves. So I would love to collaborate with any one of you here on the panel, or a lot of, women or men, maybe on their next book. And I certainly am going to try to get on McKinnon's podcast. And again, I'll put my website in the chat, along with, my link, so you guys could go in and just read up on my book. And just remember, we all have the power of choice. We all have the power of choice to determine our destiny and to build upon, our foundational values. Inspiration is something we all need, especially in these times. And this book was written especially to provide encouragement in times of despair. and in these days that we're living in right now. And I thank you again for having me on this show.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm honored, and it's a privilege, to be able to share my story and to talk about this book. It's exciting to me. It's exciting hearing the other authors. And I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens. I was married here. I had my child here. I worked here. I retired here. I'm a Queens girl, and I'm a product of the New York City public school system. It gets a bad rap, but I'm an exemplary example of what can happen through that system, from elementary to advanced degree, college work. New York City did it's just for me. I worked for New York City for almost 40 years. I'm a public servant to my heart. I just retired in 2020. I was a classroom teacher. I worked for social services. I was a case manager, a community advocate, an HR manager, and I ended as a commissioner over a large training academy. And so I was supported by New York City all throughout my life, and service in support of others is everything to me. I'm a master educator. I'm a licensed social worker, a therapist, a family recovery counselor, a grief counselor. I'm a business owner of 2 LLCs, and I work after my retirement as a business consultant. And I'm now a doctoral student for my degree in Christian counseling and psychology. So again, I'm looking to serve in any way that I can. I'm also a writer of poetry, of short stories, books, and I even love writing policy. I love the structure of it. And I find, as some of the other authors talked about, that I find a freedom in writing. I love writing. I'm a wordsmith. I love the power of words. And I'm also a woman in recovery. I have over 27 years away from drugs, alcohol, and any mood or mind altering substances. And I used to be ashamed to say that, but I'm proud of that today. I recognize how blessed I am, that I experienced the grace, to be here today to share my story. And I wrote this book because I wanted to share about the power of the recovery process with the world. When I began my recovery in 1995, I had hid my history, of using from everyone. It was a topic of shame and guilt and embarrassment and fear. And I didn't want to be judged by my past, so I didn't talk about it. But as I continued in my recovery, I realized just how powerful my story was and how effective it could be in helping other people. And so in my recovery community, we would always talk about the transformation, the power of transformation and the power of the program. And we'd say, we wish we could share our idea, of recovery, the principles, the concepts, and what recovery could do with the world. How can we do that, And I began to write this book based on that premise. I pick it up and I put it down, and it wasn't until a super mega star died from an overdose that I realized that I had a responsibility to share, that maybe, just maybe, had she read this book, she would have been able to just be saved just from the hope of knowing that, that she could recover. So I completed the book in 2008. And at that time, I wrote it under a pseudonym. It was the first version of the book. I wrote it under a pseudonym because I didn't want anybody to know that it was me that wrote this book that was talking about all the things that happened to me, prior to active addiction, during, and then afterwards. And it was my fear that kept me from actually putting my name on it. But when I retired in 2020, I realized what is there to fear? I'm just going to take a shot and trust God and keep it moving and let it help as it could help. And so, my fear of judgment far outweighed, my responsibility, and my feeling that I could help people. And so This book is designed to do just that, you know, and it's not just for addicts or alcoholics. This is a book about anybody who has anything that is going on in their life, that the recovery process has the ability to actually move you out of that, to help you to identify what it is. You know, Karen was talking about the childhood trauma, you know, and I realized that most people are working their way through stuff that happened when they were 9 or 12 or 15, you know, and this process is powerful for anybody to actually identify what's going on, you know, in their life and work through those things in order to, you know, get to a better version of themselves. So I just want to read a little from the book. I've put together all the information that I believe could serve as a basic guide to sort through some of the things that stand in the way of your potential greatness. I assure you, this book will help you in ways that you cannot imagine in this moment. What I have written has certainly helped me. I wrote this book because I felt compelled to tell my story. I genuinely want to help others, and it makes no sense to have learned all that I learned on this incredible journey called life, only to keep those insights and lessons all to myself. I began this work in 2008, and I was motivated to finish what I started in 2021. I revised this book to share new insights, new revelations, new information, and inspiring moments that changed my life. So I'm a survivor. I am a survivor of a functioning, dysfunctional alcoholic household, of overrated middle classism, of reciprocal marital domestic violence, of unexpected infidelity, of excessive drinking, uncontrolled drugging, and long-term chain smoking, of unconsciously eating all of my feelings, of not having enough, of feeling like I was not enough, of overachieving for all the wrong reasons, of looking for love in all the wrong places, of a broken marriage, of a broken heart, of abandonment by all the men in my life, of the need to be loved way too much, of no self-worth and damaged self-esteem, of lack of confidence, of a flawed self-image, of a broken, fractured personality, of needing validation, of unrelenting loneliness, of a tattoo-infused midlife crisis, of a multitude of spiritual and emotional disorders. I am a survivor of so many things that have periodically overwhelmed me throughout the years, some that have troubled me for all of my life. But the point is, I am a survivor. I am a survivor recovering from decades of living uncomfortably with myself. I've always been uncomfortable being in my own skin while trying to be comfortable with everyone else. I'm recovering from a number of isms, schisms, ideologies, and views, from unfounded ideas, beliefs and attitudes, distressing obsessions, irrational thinking, unhealthy behaviors. I'm recovering from a lot of things, a duffel bag full of life concerns. What's most important to say is that I'm recovering from myself. I'm a recovering woman, recovering from an inability to deal with the truth. I'm recovering from fantasy, from grandiosity, from failures, from fear of failure, from self-centered fear, from low self-worth and people-pleasing to prove my worth, from lying to myself and lying to others, from illusion and delusion, from an inability to confront, from running away, from not standing up, from moving too fast or moving too slow, from just being stuck with no idea how to move and nowhere to go. I'm recovering from a myriad of emotions, from feelings, hurt feelings, from unresolved anger and long-term resentments, from ongoing frustrations, from disheartening disillusionment. I'm recovering from love, from not getting enough and not getting what I need, from giving too much, from heartache and heartbreak, from pain, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, from self-indulgence based in pain, from too much of a bunch of stuff used to mask the pain, from self-neglect, from negative perception, from skewed perception of others, from very distorted thinking, from being trapped in my own thinking, stuck inside of my own mind, confined by my own self-imposed prison, struggling and grappling to get myself out. I'm recovering from all of that. I am learning how to navigate and survive my emotions, and I'm working to change outdated approaches that I've used to manage life as it presents. I am a woman in the process of recovery. I'm slowly recovering, slowly but surely. I am working it out. I had read somewhere, heard on some talk show that I have the choice to be whatever I want to be. I can choose to be sad and dissatisfied or to be happy and grateful. I have the choice to be disillusioned by the things that I don't have or the things that haven't gone my way. Or I can choose to be grateful, satisfied, and inspired by the things, the gifts that I do have. I have the choice to give up my obsessions over men, money, menopause, moods, my age, my grades, my love life, or the lack thereof, and all of the stuff that has taken my attention hostage. I can choose. I have the freedom of choice. I can decide how I want to live. I can choose what and who I want to be. I can choose to believe that I am not worthy, or that I'm worth more than I've believed over the span of my years. I can choose to love myself more, to love myself better, and I am responsible for treating myself as if I do. I can choose to believe that I am enough, that I am more than enough, just as I am. They said that I could redefine my path, re-envision my reality, course correct, create my own success, and build what I want to see for myself. I could choose to accept myself just as I am. I could choose to be my own happily ever after, despite the unforeseen, unexpected life stuff, despite my reality as it is. I could choose to believe that there could be more to life, more to my life, more to me, more in me. That's what they said. I have a choice. I could choose, and so I did. So my mission and purpose is to share with others how they can use the concepts of recovery to get better. My goal is to support others in their personal process of getting comfortable with themselves, to become more comfortable with others, and ultimately to be more comfortable dealing with life. I want to share the valuable truths that I discovered, the greatest of which is that it is possible to recover. It is possible to recover from anything. It is possible to recover from everything. So this is my effort to share with the world that recovery is possible. I am a living testament of what the power of God and a solid recovery process can do. From all of the things that I believed that I was from young, whether they were true or not, there were things that I believed, and I was shaped by those things. I was shaped by who I thought I was, who I thought people thought I was, and I became those things. I'm grateful that I was able to survive myself, my emotions, the addiction. I'm grateful to know that, addiction doesn't just go away, but what I've learned to do is to manage it in a way that I can utilize my own gifts and my own talents to navigate through the recovery process and through life as it presents. So I'm really grateful that this opportunity, I'm grateful to God that I had the courage to tell the story. And my hope is that, in the midst of this opioid explosion, of what's going on, that people that are using can be helped. But I also hope that people who are struggling with their own low self-esteem or bad relationships or, whatever it is that gets in the way, that tells you that you are not enough, that you'll be able to read this book, work through the process of it, because it is a workbook of sorts, and people will give themselves an opportunity to try to be their best self. In 2020, Karen was talking about that as well. It made me look at life. It made me look at the things that I was paying attention to that I thought was important that weren't. And it also made me start looking at things like life and grace and being alive and having opportunity and having gifts and talents, and it made me look at time and legacy and purpose, and from that time, I've just been living to align myself with what I believe God has in store for me so I can be the best version of myself and I can help as many people as I can. So stepping out of it all, a guide to recovery from everything, that is my effort to help others to tap into their greatness, because we can and we should. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Hi. First off, I want to say thank you for this opportunity and greetings to all. I've really enjoyed listening to the authors, giving me a little bit of inspiration. So thank you for that. As the other young lady said, I myself am also kind of nervous. So I'm in Oregon, and I wrote the poetry book, Feel, Heal, and Enjoy a year ago. My book never intended to be a book. It started off as me writing poetry. I've been writing poetry for 19 years now, and it was just a coping mechanism, a way for me to regulate my emotions without, bothering anyone else. So I would always just write something up real quick on anything I can find, pen, paper, napkin, whatever. And I would later just go and type it up and print it out and store it in this leather binder that I had. And so I'm like, okay, time went on and I was just like, I'm not going to share this with anyone. This is just for me. No one wants to hear what I have to say. So I had my son in 2019, and I wanted to show him that you shouldn't give up on your dreams. No dream is too big, no dream is too small. Stick the course, even if you have to start over, even if it's late, it's never too late. So for my 30th birthday, I decided I was going to do an open mic and read one of my poems. And I had never read in front of anyone before. I was so nervous. I can remember the day, it was just last year, but I was crying. I was crying because I did not want to fail. I didn't want to be embarrassed. I didn't want people to like, what is she talking about? Or why is she up here? I was dealing with so many things internally that I just couldn't see any other way but to push through. So I decided, okay, my 30th birthday as a present to me, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to read my poem. And it started off really shaky. But as I began to read, I wind up feeling empowered by the words and feeling empowered by my own story. And by the time I got to the end of the poem, I didn't even realize it at first, but so many people were clapping. So many people were acknowledging what I had done. And that moment, in that very moment, validation. And it was the best feeling I could have ever asked or ever imagined. So I was like, okay, let's see, what am I going to do with this? So I slowly decided that I wanted to do a book. Do I have enough poems? I'm like, okay, I've been writing for 19 years. I should have enough to come up with something. And as the time went on, I started taking the book more and more seriously. A fun fact, the cover of the book was actually a painting that I did. My first time actually ever painting anything. I am not an artist in any way. And I actually painted it 3 months before I even realized I was doing this book. I wanted to be able to share with people a connection to poetry, but a connection with emotion. My book is based off of love, family, empowerment, pain, racism, colorism, mental health. There's so much, but it all comes from my perspective and how I've interpreted the world. I wanted to share a poem, but before I do that, I'm still on this journey. This journey has been a full circle. I recently just released my book, and on the 23rd of July of this year, making it a full 1-year journey from the time that I read my poem to the time that I started, to where I am now. Excuse me, sorry. So my message to the audience, or my message to others, is don't give up on yourself. A lot of the times we are so hard on ourselves, and you never know that you might be someone's blessing. You might be, what you wrote or what you said might be something that someone else needs to hear. It's not just a coincidence that you're here. It's not just a coincidence that you did this. It's needed and it's important. And I have to remind myself that every day. So I wanted to share one of the poems with you. And if I have time, maybe I can squeeze in another. Okay, probably do have time because I think I'm just blowing through this pretty quickly. But the poem that started it was called Living with Monsters. Stillness, calmness, stillness, and peace of mind seems to evade me each and every time. Feels like I'm running, but my feet won't hit the ground. Looks like I'm screaming, but I never make a sound. Could I be dreaming? This can't be my reality. Hell of a nightmare, monsters living inside of me. Depression, second guessing. It's my anxiety. Strips me bare and paralyzes me. Head underwater, I can barely breathe. I don't recognize myself. Only fragmented pieces of me. Only an empty shell casing of the person I used to be. Only the shadows are left to accurately identify me. I can't stay in this dark place. This prison wasn't designed for me. So I grasp at the light, the hope, the possibility. I have scars and bruises. The battle hasn't been kind, but as difficult as it has been, I'm choosing me each and every time. So I'm not waiting for the monsters to consume me. I am breaking free. And I hope calmness, stillness, and peace of mind are on the other side, waiting for me. It's been a long journey with this book. And I get so nervous talking about it, but sometimes it feels like, I guess, imposter syndrome, like I didn't really do this, or this isn't, what people want to hear. But my book was originally written for me. It was to help myself. It was to help me identify how I feel, understand it, heal from it, and move forward. And I'm just really hoping that even if I can just help one person to be able to pick up this book and said, wow, that helped. Wow, I understand. That would make all the work, all the time, all the effort, it'll make it worth it. I think I might still have some time. I'm not sure. I still have a little bit of time left. I do have one more poem, just to kind of eat away some more time. This is another poem from my book, and it just kind of, it's a little fun twist with it, but it helps me remember why I did this in the first place. And it's called A Voice. How can words make a difference if no one will listen? Too caught up in their own affliction to even bear witness, to see the key to humanity could be within me, or the man on the corner trying to sell a CD. They rather stand in a shallow sea of hypocrisy. I get too deep. It's no wonder they can't follow me. They choke on the truth, so they're unable to swallow me. I could be a cliche on the runway and they still couldn't model me. How could I be heard if I'm drowned out by nonsense? Lately, everyone has an opinion, but they all lack content, claim to be conscious, but overlooking monsters, standing in plain sight and still unresponsive, being passive aggressive, Hope and aggression is passing, acknowledging the issue, but still not reacting. We're lacking, backtracking. What's really happening? I'm fighting for a chance. Well, I'm writing for a chance to get in on the action. I'm no politician. I'm not here for free health care or rising tuition. I'm here for Black welfare and to inspire ambition. I'm working for better days. I'm not just wishing. And I'm not asking for too much. I'm just asking that you listen. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone and good morning to those of you that's on the Central or Pacific time zone. My name is Karimah Grayson. Originally, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States. The other day, I was looking at the registration for the Evite, and it asked, what's your ethnicity? Black and white, and all this. And then I had a conundrum because recently I've received my DNA from Ancestry.com, and I have like 92% Sub-Saharan African and 8% European. I said, I want to start calling myself Black and white. One of the reasons I've decided that is because they're trying to erase our history. And those of us that are here, we're history come to life. I'm introducing myself that way first because of my book, The Shoulders on Which I Stand. But before I start on that book, I want to explain, it's in a genre called Muslim fiction. It's called Muslim fiction. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of it, but there are a plethora of Muslim authors that are writing fiction, really good books as well. I wrote this book loosely based on my life, but also because I've done a lot of historical studies and because I'm a historian of sorts. We all stand on shoulders of those who had to endure so many different types of atrocities and who have also had successes in the United States, and because we're all from the diaspora across the world. I, by profession, am an educator, and I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I love it because it's beautiful and the sun shines and the skies are blue and the trees are green. So The Shoulders on Which I Stand, I'm going to give you a background. Well, actually, before I give you a background, I would like to read from chapter 1. So it's The Shoulders on Which I Stand by Karimah Grayson. And before I start, my book has 3, it's the same content, but it has 3 different covers. My first cover, it was like this. I don't know if you could see it. So there were some Muslim women that were like, oh my gosh, the book is so racy. I don't know if I can even read it. My husband's gonna be mad. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because they see the man with his shoulders and he's doing, I'm like, it's where your mind is going. So that's why the one that Mr. Sankofa showed has the older gentleman, and I have one with a Muslim woman with a niqab on, just so that it can approach. I want people to read the book, and I don't want them to get all caught up thinking that this is some type of erotica. It's not. So here's chapter 1, The Shoulders on Which I Stand by Karimah Grayson. Rushing from the 3rd staff meeting of the week, Daria darted through the group of students. As she approached the classroom door, her students gathered around asking her many questions. She turned around and pointed for the students to line up against the wall. They knew her procedure. They needed to enter her classroom in an orderly fashion. After the students entered the classroom, she turned on the television, tuned into the morning announcements, and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. Although she didn't agree with the pledge, she encouraged the students to stand and be respectful. As soon as the morning announcements ended, Daria turned towards the students and wondered why so many hands were up. Yes, Trevante. Miss, when are we going to learn African American history again? Do we have to wait for Black History Month? I want to learn about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman, Trevante said for the 3rd time this week. It never surprised Daria. Each time the students asked about learning African American history, they always wanted to learn about the Holy Trinity of African American history. First of all, let's get this straight, Daria said, folding her arms across her chest. African Americans are part of the woven fiber of this country. Therefore, when I teach you, it will not just include Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. But Miss, They're the reason we're free and can ride the bus, Charlene said, looking Daria straight in the eyes. Just think about that statement, Daria said, counting to 10 in her head. Year after year, she has had different students who ask the same question. She's not frustrated with the students. The frustrating part was that these students are now in the 11th grade, and the only African Americans they can name are the Holy Trinity. But Miss Trevante began, I remember being taught that if it wasn't for Martin Luther King Jr., none of us would be free. Before we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who can tell me about El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Daria said. Who? The class said in unison, looking from one to the other. You may have heard of him as Malcolm X, Daria said with a chuckle. Oh, him, June said as she raised her hand. He was a slave, right? A slave? Why do you say he was a slave, June? Daria said, not understanding the response. Because his last name is X, and that was to get rid of his slave name, June said, raising her right eyebrow. Daria laughed aloud when she heard this. She was surprised that June knew about slave names. However, it bothered her that out of all of her students, only one has heard of him, and her information was incorrect. June, excellent use of context clues. Sorry. Now I understand why you thought he was a slave. You are correct. The X was used to replace the slave name, but that doesn't mean he was a slave. Let me see if I can help you understand. Your last name is Jones, right, June? Yes. Okay, the Jones last name came from a slave master. Generally, you do not see people from different African countries with the last name of Jones. But Miss, June said, my parents aren't slaves. Correct. They aren't, because slavery ended for most slaves in 1865. However, the Jones surname came from the slave masters of your ancestors. Surname? Miss, why do you use such hard words? What is a surname? Surname is another word for last name. Remember when I told you I'm here to educate you? This education includes increasing your vocabulary. Now back to Malcolm X. Before he was Malcolm X, he was Malcolm Little. That being said, does anyone else know anything about him? Wait, Miss, what about the name El-Hajj Malik or whatever you said, Jose said. I'm glad you picked up on that, Jose. Near the end of his life, he accepted Islam and changed his name to Malik El-Shabazz. After performing the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca that all Muslims must make at least once in their lifetime, the moniker El-Hajj was added to his name. Here she goes again with those big words, Trevante said, louder than necessary. What is a moniker, Miss? June said, enthralled with the conversation. I'm glad you asked, Daria said, happy to see her students picking up on the unfamiliar words. A moniker is a title one selects for oneself. I remember hearing that he used to be a Muslim and he stopped, said Lincoln. Well, you're almost right. He was in the Nation of Islam. This is a Black nationalist movement whose teachings went against many of the tenets of Al-Islam. As he studied and learned more about Al-Islam, he realized that what he was taught was not Al-Islam. So he left the Nation of Islam and testified his faith. Not long afterward, he made the pilgrimage to Hajj in Saudi Arabia. But Miss, what does he have to do with African-American history? Amelia piped in. Well, as Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks encouraged non-violence, Malcolm X believed in self-defense by any means necessary. I don't understand, Miss. What does by any means necessary mean? Zaria said, holding her head to the side. What it means, Zaria, is that instead of turning the other cheek, Malcolm X believed in defending himself. This is why he wasn't as important as the other three you mentioned. But I want you all to know that there are many people and organizations that were as relevant in American history. This is very interesting, Miss. I didn't know anything you just told me. We weren't taught this in other classes, Latasha said. That's a continuous question Daria had. Why indeed are students taught only about the Holy Trinity of African-American history? Why isn't African-American history included in the lessons in regular American history, since there have been Africans here before the Mayflower and beyond? Latasha, what a fantastic question. But as a character in the movie said, it doesn't matter, it's in the past. We cannot focus on what you didn't learn. What we will do this school year is focus on what you will learn. The students stood up and began applauding and cheering. In order to not have the administration come to her classroom, Daria quieted the students and made them sit back down. This school year, we're going to learn American history and incorporate all of the people involved in the development of this great country of ours. Often, we make the US as if it is a dichotomous society. Daria looked around and saw some hands with a look of befuddlement, while others, saw some students with a look of befuddlement, while others raised their hand as soon as she said the word, waiting for her to call on them. Yes, Juan. What is I don't know how to say it, but what is the word you said? I'm so proud of you raising your hand and asking the question, Jean. The word is dichotomous, which means two specific groups of people. Now, class, repeat the word after me. Dichotomous. Dichotomous, they said in unison. Daria heard some students mispronounce the word. Okay, one more time. I didn't hear everyone. Some of you are saying it incorrectly. Repeat it after me. Dichotomous. Dichotomous. They repeated again. Much better, Daria said. What I mean is that the United States was never just black and white. There have been multiple ethnicities and races of people involved in the growth and development in this country. For example, you will learn how the Chinese were important in the building of railroads. This country has a rich history, and we are all integral parts of the history. Miss, I like your class. Do we have any homework? Antoine said as he looked at the clock. As always, Antoine, the homework is written on the board. Make sure you write it down in your agenda. Well, class, the bell is about to ring. Make sure to gather all your belongings, and I will release you when the bell rings. Ring. Okay, class, I will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. So I wrote this book because as a history teacher, more times than not, now since President Obama is been a black president, they say Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, now they say President Obama. And unfortunately, it's stated, people think African-American history is only for black people. But if across the board, everyone is taught it, it will be a better respect. I don't think we will have as much animosity in the country as we have now if everyone is taught to be as important. Now, I decided to write, I've always wanted to be an author. And one year, it was during the month of Ramadan, and I really don't like to turn the television on during that time. And I just sat down and started typing. And the words just flew onto the page from my fingers. It was as if I was watching a story. I was watching a movie. I could not wait until the next chapter. To me, being an author, having a platform to tell our story, I think it was, and I may be wrong, but I think it was maybe Nikki Giovanni, but someone stated, if the story you want to read is not written, then write it. And a lot of times, some of the Muslim fiction, not the one most current, but most of them were written from maybe the Arab perspective or the Pakistani perspective. Because I am a Black American and I'm a Muslim, my Muslim fiction is written from the Black American perspective. Because being a Muslim in the United States as a Black person is unlike being a Muslim anywhere else around the world. Because being in the United States as a Black person is different than it is anywhere around the world, because the United States has its own interesting history regarding people. I did decide to self-publish my book because I had a publisher, she was just taking forever, and I had a co-worker, and he had these students write these books, and next thing I know, the books ended up at the school. I'm like, well, tell me what happened. And he explained to me what he did. So I went through the self-publishing process. Writing is cathartic for me. I've written 3 books. I have The Shoulders on Which I Stand. I have Ariba's Dilemma, Love or Deem. And pretty much love or deem means as a Muslim woman, you're only supposed to marry a Muslim man, but Ariba had this dilemma whether she's going to marry a friend of hers that was not Muslim. And then I created a journal called Be an Eagle, Not a Feather, because I've seen students, they go by the way, some students, if they have no goal, they float through the air like a feather. So I wrote a journal initially for my students, but then I published it and put it into the atmosphere. I really do appreciate for being provided this opportunity to be on this platform, to share my book and to share my thoughts. Thank you.
All right, peace and love. I am based in New Orleans, Louisiana, my hometown. And Sister Karimah, Toni Morrison said, if you have not read the story that you want, you should write it. And I had was very fortunate to meet Toni Morrison when I was 19 years old. So I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a graduate of the University of Southern California, Fight On Trojans. I'm the oldest of four, and I was raised in a single female-headed household. And in America, that is a mouthful. And there's two things that I want to do today. The book that I'm going to read from and discuss is the Richard Wright book. But before I do that, I am also releasing a podcast. And the name of my podcast is The Masculine Intellectual, where I will focus on the traditional nuclear Black family, because I believe that the traditional nuclear Black family has the ability to address most of our problems in America, and which Sister Grayson spoke of. And I do believe that most people, including Black people, are ignorant of the contributions that we have made in America. Most people do not know who Bessie Coleman is. Most people do not know of the Black inventors. And it's amazing. And I used to, one of the things that made me angry, the angriest thing, was when I was younger and I'd hear people say, racism hurts white people as much as it hurts us. Nothing made me angrier when I heard that. But as I have grown older, as I have lived, now I understand what that means. And Sister Grayson was touched upon that. Most people are ignorant of our contribution, not only to America, but to the world. And so I guess at some point, and in some ways, every Black author in America, if they don't feel that way, they contribute to the zeitgeist, our cultural contribution to the country, to the United States, and to the world. And so I'd like to do a few things, share a few things. First, I'm going to read my mission statement for the Masculine Intellectual. If we are going to be masters of our destiny, we must be masters of the ideas that influence that destiny. Dr. John Heinrich Clarke. The name as well as the concept for my new podcast did not come from me. It came from my years of mentorship, activism, and work dedicated to those who look like me. The Masculine Intellectual is my attempt to build a platform for the economic, cultural, intellectual, and spiritual uplift of male youth and young males of African descent, ages 12 through 30. My prayer is that they take their rightful place in the traditional nuclear Black family, all caps, as future fathers and responsible, well-rounded leaders. I seek to provide a repository of resources so I can help shape holistic, balanced Black men. And the topics we will tackle are self-actualization, healing, transformation, the traditional nuclear Black family, race, economics, politics, as it pertains to people of African descent, education, literature, Black culture, and interviews and workshops. And some of the early topics, to give you an example, will be financial literacy for teens. We'll talk about reparations. We'll talk about responsible parenting, things of that nature. And I'm set to launch in late September. And I would ask I'll put my Facebook page in the chat so that we can stay in touch. And now I'm going to read to you the introduction to my first nonfiction book, which is something close to my heart. My second nonfiction book, the author copy wasn't ready. My second nonfiction book is Charmed, I'm Sure, The Black Male's Guide to Success in America, where I talk about some of the strategies that I used in order to educate myself in a country that I believe on a conscious and subconscious level seeks to destroy Black males. So I'm going to share something, my favorite poem that I think encapsulates the struggle of not only Black people in America, but I guess it's safe to say Black people in the world, as we, our ancestors and we deal with the after effects of the transatlantic slave trade, and brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and on the continent deal with the after effects of colonialism. I'd like to share with you my favorite poem in the whole wide world, written in 1922 by Brother Fenton Johnson. This is called Tired. I am tired of work. I am tired of building up somebody else's civilization. Let us take a rest, Miss Lizzie Jane. I will go down to the Last Chance Saloon, drink a gallon or two of gin, shoot a game or two of dice, and sleep the rest of the night on one of Mike's barrels. You will let the old shanty go to rot, the white people's clothes turn to dust, and the Calvary Baptist Church sink to the bottomless pit. You will spend your days forgetting you married me, and your nights hunting the gin Mike serves the ladies in the rear of the Last Chance Saloon. Throw the children into the river. Civilization has given us too many. It is better to die than it is to grow up and find out you are colored. Pluck the stars out of the heavens. The stars mark my destiny. The stars mark your destiny. I am tired of civilization. Now I'd like to read from the introduction of Institutional Racism and briefly describe why I decided to tackle this subject. Literary scholar Keith Kinnaman said that Fenton Johnson sat out the Harlem Renaissance, but his work Tired probably best describes the depths of despair of millions of African Americans felt historically, as well as today. It is a poem that Richard Wright could painfully and immediately relate to. In 1908, including the decades that followed, life was extraordinarily difficult for African Americans. And due to the structure of the nuclear family unit, this is especially true for the main target of institutional racism, African American males. Based on the racist principles this nation was founded upon, African American males have a shorter life expectancy and an unemployment rate almost 3 times higher than everyone else, and represent an inordinate amount of the prison population, even though we are only 13% of the US population. And by the way, we are 47% of the prison population, but 13% of the total population. In June of 2013, the US Supreme Court struck down a vital clause of the 1964 Civil Rights Voting Act, stating in effect that racism in 2013 was not the issue it was in 1965. So racism in 2022, it says 2019, is worse than it was in 1965 because so many rights that people died for are being taken back and the oppressed have been lulled to sleep by apathy and a false sense of security. Black scholars such as Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois have confronted this issue as early as 1897 in scholarly articles that became The Souls of Black Folk. Scholars say that Dr. Du Bois was 100 years ahead of his time because he discussed something that is still a problem today, the color line. Like Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu's Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, 1985, This work will heavily reference Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's ISIS papers, The Keys to the Color, 1991. Before one studies American history, institutional racism and white male supremacy must be fully understood and critically analyzed. Throughout my lifetime, I have personally seen many examples of Black masculinity or manhood, far more positive than negative. And I am referring to those great avatars I have read about, as well as those I saw and interacted with. I am talking about my elders and my peers. They have all left me with some jewels of wisdom that I have tried to incorporate in my journey. Recently, I've had extremely disturbing conversations with a small handful of Black males that have expressed some views about historic events that shook me to my core. Namely, 1, African kings were responsible for the slave trade, and 2, Black on Black crime is the #1 problem of the Black community. My goal is to offer substantial, factual, and practical volumes of evidence to the contrary. Institutional racism, white male supremacy, and white light skin privilege is the foundation and main cause of Black oppression, and nothing else. Moreover, I will remain on my lifelong learner mission so I can continue to be a resource for my students, my family, my friends, and ultimately humanity. So this was my first nonfiction book, and the reason that the title is so long is because it was actually my master's thesis, and I said to myself one day, you know, I worked too hard on this for only 2 or 3 people to see it. So I decided to expand it into my first nonfiction book. And I am currently in the process of making it available to libraries and bookstores in 10 of my targeted states across the country. And perhaps it'll sell around the world if I am so fortunate. I recently visited Jackson State University, which is in Jackson, Mississippi, and they actually named their writing lab in honor of Richard Wright. There is a brief story that I can tell. James Baldwin has recently, over the last 10 years, been rediscovered by scholars. And but what no one talks about is Richard Wright was his mentor. In 1943, I believe, listen to these 2 names. Langston Hughes called Richard Wright to tell him about a 24-year-old James Baldwin. Think about those 3 names for a second. And once Charmed, I'm sure, comes out, and once I launched the podcast, you'll hear me talking a lot about Richard Wright. I think it's unfair to minimize him to native son. He was a historic figure. I always say that what Richard Wright did, what Jackie Robinson did in sports, Richard Wright did in the world of literature. And that when Native Son came out in 1947, I believe, it was a smash hit. And it smashed the misconception that Black people were happy. It did so much for Black literature. And in I take that back, in 1940, Native Son came out. And in 1945, he released Black Boy, which was his life story. And so what I do with institutional racism, I follow the lives of 3 Black men. Of course, Bigger Thomas from Native Son, Richard Wright himself in Black Boy, and Fred Daniels, which, by the way, I strongly recommend that you all read his short story, The Man Who Lived Underground. I read it when I was 18 years old, and it had an incredible impact on me. The story reminded me of what they did to Freddie Gray. So Fred Daniels was a regular working man, and the story goes, a white woman was killed, and 3 crooked cops just grabbed Fred Daniels and beat a confession out of him. He escapes into the sewers and he goes on this incredible journey. And that's all I'll tell you of the story, but I really hope you go out, you find the man who lived underground. You definitely will be enriched by it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tolu A. Akinyemi, the Lion of Newcastle, based in Newcastle upon Tyne. And I write in the genre of children's literature, essays, short stories, and poetry. And so far, I have written and published 16 books, and I have 4 books forthcoming as well. So apart from what I do with the Royal Lion Newcastle, I am also the co-founder of Lion and Lilac. Lion and Lilac is a literary art and cultural organization based in the UK. And we have a magazine where we publish works of writers from around the world. So you can check us out on lionandlilac.org. And our aim is to be like a home for underrepresented writers, so where they can, hang their works. And we've been going on strong since January 2020. So if any of you are looking for a home to submit your works to, then do consider us at Lion and Lilac as well. Then I'm also the founder of the Newcastle Review, and the Newcastle Review is also a literary organization where we celebrate writers, their works, give writers the recognition that they deserve, not just in Newcastle upon Tyne, but beyond the borders of Newcastle. And I think as a Black author, Black writer as well, I've had this kind of bias towards Black writers. And yeah, so try to give their works more recognition and more prominence by helping to share their news or having interviews with Black authors. And I think I've had a couple of interviews with writers, with authors who have attended the Black Books webinar as well, just to help them showcase their works. So if anyone is interested, you can reach out to me thereafter. And my own website is tolutolu.com. So I think this evening I will just talk briefly about my latest release, my children's book, which is titled "If You Have to Be Anything, Be Kind." Yeah. So, but before that book was released, I think last year I released 2 children's books, and this is one of them. I Wear Self-Confidence Like a Second Skin, and the second one is titled "I Am Not a Troublemaker." And these are children's books with like Black characters, so showcasing the strength of giving that representation in the books to Black children, to see characters that look like them as well, which is one of the issues that we face within the sector in the United Kingdom, whereby I think the statistics is between 5 to 10% of children's books published in the UK have Black characters in them. And I think it is our responsibility as Black authors, where we see there are gaps to be plugged. It's our responsibility to plug those gaps, to write those books, to tell our stories. Because if we do not tell these stories, no one will tell our stories for us. Yeah, so the recent one that just came out is titled "If You Have to Be Anything, Be Kind." And I think the reason why I've written this book is because we live in a world whereby cruelty reigns supreme. And if we have to instill into our young people the benefit of kindness from a young age, I think it's quite like a pivotal message. So in the past, I've written on themes around boosting self-confidence of young people, boosting their self-esteem. Well, I think it's also very important that we let people know that kindness is indeed important in the world that we live in. And I think it was last week while I was playing football with my mates, and I was sharing like the invite to my book launch, and some of my mates were like, "Oh, like it was the title resonated with them as well because they were like, oh, like even on the pitch, people have to be kind to one another. When we are even playing football, how you get in there, tackle people, and all of that. So it goes to show that being kind is not just a message for young people. The same way self-confidence is not a message for young people only, or self-esteem or having a good self-esteem is not for young people only. It's for all of us to take in the message that if we have to be anything in the world, let's be kind through our words, through our actions. And in this story, so I will just read like the synopsis first, and I will just read a little excerpt from the book as well. So about the book, Mom wants Angie and Abby to be kind children. If you have to be anything, be kind, she always tells them. She encourages them to set healthy boundaries and to reflect to others the kindness they want for themselves. But when faced with bullies at school, will they remember Mom's lessons, or will they become bullies too? So that's just the synopsis for the book. So I will just read like a short excerpt from the book as well. Dad had just arrived at school to pick Angie and Abby. It was raining heavily. Angie and Abby had one umbrella each, while their friends, Caspar and Irene, were getting soaked in the rain with none. That said, Abby, would you like to share Angie's umbrella with her and give yours to Caspar and Irene? I would love to, Abby replied. In the car, Dad asked, does anyone know why we offered one umbrella to Caspar and Irene? Abby answered gleefully, because sharing is caring. Also, so they don't get wet. Angie chipped in, it pays to be kind. Very well said, kids, Dad said delightedly. What I've done is that it's not just their dad like telling them what they have to do in terms of offering help to their friends who were getting wet in the book, but also the children themselves, they understand why they did what, or why they took that action as well. I think it's very important for our young people as well to understand the reason why they make the decisions they make, or when the adults around them prompt them to make certain decisions, then it's good we question them as well, help them to gain an understanding why they have taken that decision. And when they do not understand why they took that course of action, it's also our responsibility as adults to explain to our young ones why it is beneficial to be kind, and if they have to be anything at all, they have to be kind. So it's a pleasure to be here once again, and I would drop all my contacts in the chat box. I remain Tolu Toludo, the Lion of Newcastle, and Marcone, keep up the great work, and I'm always here to support you and chip in my help whenever required. Thank you, everyone, and it feels great to be here this evening. Thank you.
Greetings, salutations, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody tuning in from all over the world. My name is Ryan Cameron. I go by Cam-Tron as well. I'm an author, actor, animator, artist, and amongst many other things. I am the author of the book Tales from Pangea. I am from the Bronx, New York, by way of Jamaican parents. I then moved to South Florida, which is where I was raised, and now I currently reside in Atlanta. The story of the journey about my book has to, you kind of have to dig back a little bit in time or a point in my time when I took a spill. I ended up kind of losing myself for a short period of time, and during those years, I landed in the American justice system, so to speak. But it's important because when I went in, I was still a kid, so I thought in that way. But during that time, I've been able to just learn and cultivate my interests with life. And when I was there, I saw so much talented and gifted people there that the world isn't gonna get a chance to see. There's a lot of blessed people, a lot of talented and just gifted people behind the walls that get overlooked and that aren't gonna get their chance to show their talent and their craft. We could talk about this all day. From any aspect of life you could think of, like doctors and scholars and many more, artists and the like. So I said all that to say, when I made it there, I made it my point to better myself, because I knew how talented I am and the things that I have to put forth. So from seeing them, that inspired me and encouraged me to want to better, to put forth what I have to show. And during that time was when I ended up coming up with the initial concept for the book, amongst many other stories. So it was really just like a kind of like an escape for like an afternoon, if you would say it that way. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the book, if you don't mind. Okay. In a lawless world infested by chaos and rivalry, pirates rule the skies. Young Thomas von Zeppelin and his adopted brother Naji have finally come of age and are eager for adventure, ready to embrace the unknown on board the world's first aircraft. They stumble upon a treasure map leading to the rumored lost city of Old, a once lavish kingdom surrounded by an oasis. With his father's legacy threatened by an old adversary, Thomas now has 14 days to come up with an inexorable sum of money or face the harsh streets of Edenia. Leaving no other option, they set off on a wild steampunk adventure across the fabled continent of Pangea. Risking their lives in lieu of treasure, they must first overcome the toughest pirates and obstacles. To make matters worse, hot on their tail is the Red Ring, the most fearsome syndicate in the sky. Can the heroes find the forgotten city before it's too late? Or will they reach an untimely end from the perils that lay ahead? Find out in this thrilling race to the finish. And during the time of me writing this book, I made a lot of stories. I guess the best way to say that is I'm a storyteller, like first and foremost. So whatever platform I use to do that's what I use to shine through. So this particular medium being a literary work was the book. And I said all that to say I'm an artist too. So I wanted to help people to understand the world that that I was creating. So I actually designed the cover and all the pictures in it. I'm not sure if my camera will do justice of it, but you can check it out online. It's in all major bookstores, or you can check it out on the book's website, talesfrompangea.com. I'll try to leave the links in the comments and such. But as I wrap up, I do want to point out once again how important that journey and that time in my life was, because I mentioned, I went in a kid and not exactly to say, age-wise, but my maturity level, I was mature, but you don't fully grow until you go through, a thing that forces you to grow, so to speak, right? And during that time, I picked up anything. I was putting my brain into anything. Like I started reading when I went there too. I wasn't really too big on reading books prior to then, but once I got there, I was dissecting any and every book. I first started with the urban novel books, but that quickly got boring, and then I advanced from that to religious literary works, just to dissect those, get those out the way. Research books, theses. I can't even draw them off the top of my head because I was reading so much of them. And I said that to say, so that was just like a part of like the fire and the hunger, that I had during that time, and I still carry it on now. I was able to leave that situation with a college degree. Since then, I've been in local TV shows and movies. My debut single has just came out like a week ago. I'll leave a link to that too in the comments and stuff. I'm working on the pilot for a cartoon TV show partnered with Barnhouse Media. Working on clothes, got those coming out soon. There's an influx of so many things I can't even really draw from the top of my head. But I was, just referencing that still to the hunger and the drive that I got, during that situation, and a part of why I'm willing to, go so hard for it today is because I know that there's many, friends that I had in that situation, or just acquaintances that are full of so much talent that the world would truly benefit from having these people out here, but they'll never, get their time to shine or get their chance to be, exposed, or get the opportunity to, bring forth that to the world. So that's the main thing I would say there. You can find me on Cam-Tron, CamTronStudios.com. The book is in all major bookstores. The book's website is talesfrompangea.com. And yeah.
So good morning, Tamera Foley, and I am a former educator for about 40 years and still working with children. I own Education for All now, and we are a consulting business. We help parents, we help agencies, we help school districts to teach about special education, social and emotional learning. We also support school districts in the area of special education, training for teachers. So then part of Education for All now is also the Cassie's Big Change series. And so Cassie's Big Change series has several books, and one is Cassie's Big Change, How COVID-19 Changed the Way We Learn. And this book was written in the midst of COVID, of course. And this book is, the main character is Cassie, and it incorporates Cassie and her friends. And also you learn about the support that Cassie gets, not only from her friends, but from her teacher and her parents as she maneuvers the pandemic. And as she maneuvers all of her emotions and feelings that's going on with her during this time. And I wrote the book because I knew that children all over the world were having some feelings about being at home, not being at school, some not being able to communicate with their friends, not being able to get the support, whether they were a foster child or whether they got other mental health supports. So it was a lot going on, and it still is, but it's in a different time now. So that book also has a coloring and activity book that complements the book. The second book I published, third book, is Cassie's Big Change, going from the living room to the classroom. And this is, again, Cassie and her friends and her teachers and parents. This is about Cassie transitioning from her home, being schooled at home, to going back in the building at school. And we know that many children have done that, but we also know that a great number of parents have decided not to send their children back to school in a building, but to homeschool. So we've addressed some of those concerns. So Garwell Publishing is a publishing agency, and we help independent authors to publish their work. We don't take any royalties. We don't do any of that. Our name is nowhere on your book, but certainly we can help you with that process. And we're all about the process. We can ghostwrite for you. We have a team of excellent experts to help you through the process. So the first book that Garwell Publishing published was Exploring My Emotions. And this is a 45-day journal for elementary school age children. This is a place for them to write and explore their emotions or feelings and to dream about where they want to be in the future. So we know that we have different emotions, we have different feelings, and this is here just to help them to explore. It has a daily affirmation, a place where they can check in on their feelings using emojis, word of the day, questions to explore, fun activities, and writing exercises. And all of these books are available on Amazon, and they are available at cassiesbigchange.com website. So I want to talk to you just a few minutes about the importance of journaling. So we know that children, a journal is not a substitute for any mental health treatment. So, but we know that it can become accessible to children, and that children don't always want to talk about their feelings. They don't know how to talk about their feelings. Sometimes they're unsure about what they're feeling. And sometimes they've experienced so much trauma. And we know that as a nation, we have experienced trauma during this continued pandemic. Okay, so this enables children to write about that. It gives them an opportunity to reflect and gives them an opportunity to start healing and coping with what's going on. There are different types of journals, but one thing that journaling really helps children to do is expressive personal writing. So when children experience trauma, we're not asking them to write about their trauma, but certainly we're asking them just to write about their feelings. How are they doing right now? And journaling has been around for centuries. So this isn't anything new. It started out with notes. It started out with thoughts and people using notebooks, people using drawings or illustrations about their feelings. So I think it's really important that children have an outlet. All of the books that I publish personally, I was inspired by reading books at a young age and going to neighborhood libraries and dreaming of writing with children's books. So I write children's books to improve literacy for children. And I want children to read stories that they can relate to from a child's perspective. So my stories all teach social and emotional learning and begin the conversation with children about their feelings. And I want children to be comfortable expressing their feelings. So my goal is that children will stand up for their personal success, their academic success, their mental health, wellness, and civic responsibility. And that socially emotional learning is taught in school in most schools, not in all, and that it can be supported at home and in the community. So asking children how they feel, listening to them, helping them process their emotions is crucial in managing their mental health. So Cassie's Big Change, and I just want to talk about this book, Cassie's Big Change, Going from the Living Room to the Classroom, addresses self-awareness as Cassie and her classmates understand their feelings and the previous year's changes. Cassie's story addresses self-management as children write daily in their journals, and they can't wait until the appropriate time to ask questions of their teacher. Cassie's story addresses social awareness as the children work together to give positive feedback to their peers during the writing process. And Cassie's story addresses relationship skills. Cassie and her classmates maintain friendships over the years and communicate their family situations. So Cassie's story addresses responsible decision-making skills as she sought input from her parents on naming her bear. One of the projects that I am working on outside of the publishing agency is we have a group called Lit for Social Emotional Learning. And this group was started last year. And we started the group, and we are a group of authors that write books that address social and emotional learning for children. So we have decided to share some of these books in a bundle form or a box form. And that box will be coming out sometime in the next 30 days. And it is a way for parents to buy books that address social and emotional learning from various authors. So I want to just share a couple of the authors. I don't have everyone's book with me today, but to share just some of the books that will be in the box. And I can't give you all the details right now because we're still working on them, but certainly in the next 30 days, you will see, I'll have it on my website. It'll be on the Lit for SEL page, and I'll put that in Linktree, and it will be available. We're only doing so many of them, so it will be a limited supply. So one of the books is Who's to Say? And this is written by Devin Tellis. And this book is a book of affirmations that empower kids to learn and be their own cheerleaders. It will help them to learn how to deflect the untruths thrown their way by others or even themselves. And the sooner that they can build confidence, learn to talk about themselves with positivity, the better. Once kids believe they can achieve. And Devin Tellis is a former educator, and she was challenged by both her own children and her former students. So she is one of our authors, and she lives in Birmingham, Alabama. So this is just one of the books. Another book that's in the book box will be Scary Dinosaur and the Stinky Skunk. And this is a book to teach children how to share with others. Has your child ever had a toy that they loved so much that when it was hard for them to share? So even with their best friends, sometimes children still have those issues. So Scary Dinosaur and Stinky Skunk, they made a new discovery in the woods, and that will challenge them to problem solve, ways to share and take turns with each other. This book is written by D.M. Whitaker and her son, Deuce Whitaker. And this is one in the collection of books that they have written. And those are the two of the books. That's not all. That's two of the books that will be in the Social Emotional Learning book bundle. And we're really hoping that people will embrace this, embrace teaching their children about their emotions, their feelings, and knowing that those SEL concepts and components are needed in their child's daily life. And I'll have more in the coming months, but certainly I'll put the Linktree in there. It's not on the page yet, but it will be soon. So thank you so much. I want to thank Makonnen for having me, and thank him for just having this platform for authors. And congratulations to all those who have published and are in the process of publishing now or have a new book coming out. I know it's a journey, but it's a journey well worth it. Thank you.
Well, hello, thank you. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity. As stated, I am an author that loves to make people think, and I provide resources for those who are starting their process to progress by way of books, motivation, and self-paced online courses. I am a native of New Jersey, but I reside in Texas. I teach self-motivated female millennials who are ready to take action on their repressed goals as it relates to moving up in their career and or out into self-employment. So if you're asking what qualifies me to teach anybody anything, I'm glad that you asked. I have been working and serving the community by way of training and administration within the states, within private sector, public sector, and within the government for the past 10 plus years. My thought patterns are captured in Duke Engineering Pratt School of Engineering Journal. And my life experiences have taught me that being less fortunate is not just money, food, and housing, but in gaining access to information that will assist you to execute and see what's possible. My process in writing and starting this began when I began noticing patterns in my life of not having enough. I had the title I served in education and healthcare, as many already stated, but I never had enough. And I had this inner frustration within myself, and I began to seek for help, and some was like, well, no one helped me. And others were like, well, why can't you just be satisfied with where you are? And I got tired of being asked for my ideas and asked on this particular job to serve on this board and that board. And then when I would apply for the job, I was constantly told no. So I decided to take action for myself. And I began to do my research and then I began to change my outcome. Today, I have defied what others told me was possible for me. I'm not saying I have arrived, but I have exceeded what others say is normal for me today. Because as Miles Monroe said, you will never change anything that you're willing to tolerate. So as stated before, as a result, I began to aim higher with consistency and time, because there is no get rich quick solution for anything. I will state that. I began to aim higher. And as a result, I have changed the narrative for my life in creating what is possible. One thing that I will say, which begins with my book, How to Prepare for What's Next. First, you need to know what you bring to the table. You need to know what the problem is and the problem that you solve in the table, so you can create a change that will be a win for you and a win for them. Because one of the patterns that I noticed, all of the ideas and things, they were creating a win for them and the other companies, but it wasn't a win for me. My salary was not changing. So it's important for you to know what answers that you provide when you look at the different patterns. Pay attention to the different patterns in your life. The first step I always teach is awareness. So you need to be aware of what you bring and what your options are, so then you can execute. Those things are mentioned in my ebook, which is available. All of my books or resources and online courses are available at ShauneilleSmith.com. And the first step is awareness, because one thing that people fail to realize today is that your ideas are for today. You're seeing issues, you're seeing problems, and today is the day for you to execute. There will never be a perfect time for you to execute. Imagine if Steve Jobs was tried to present his idea in the 1950s. The time wasn't right. So the issues that you see and the ideas that you have, they are for today. So therefore, it's an imperative that you start your process, because that's what my role. I'm here to assist you to start. So life changes as we've seen. So therefore, we must change in the way we navigate in through life. So as stated, how to prepare for what's next. It is to help you to transition in implementing steps that you can start now to transition from either moving up in your career or out into entrepreneurship. And I also have the hookup, no investment, no return. It's all about personal development and strategies that I have learned in my process to progress, actionable steps in identifying different things. A lot of people, they want to jump on and go to Starbucks and these other places using their free Wi-Fi. And then when you're ready to start your program, you haven't invested in anything. It's a win-win thing. As you invest, you also have to give as well. So just steps on that. And then as you move and you have gone through your process and identify what your blind spots, things that you weren't aware of, and things that have hindered you in your process to progress, then you are, I also have this, which is a journal. You must take time to get to know you. A lot of people, they know about all the stars and what they're doing and what they're good at. But my question is, do you know you? Do you know your strengths, your weaknesses? Do you know the things that have worked for you? So it is imperative. This is a guided journal that will assist you in your process to progress so that you can identify what works. Well, all of my resources are for you to identify what works and do the process of elimination so that you can increase your productivity in achieving your goals at a quicker pace. So you first must evaluate yourself, do the process, track it, and then eliminate. Denzel Washington stated, all of us have talent. All of us have talent, but we must find the value that we see in ourselves, then cultivate it, and then develop it. So that is what all of my online courses are designed to do, for you to use what you have, as George Washington stated, use it now. George Washington Carver, use what you have, and most importantly, to do it right now. And let me see, I also have my specialties, which are on my website. I love to motivate people, if you haven't noticed. And I teach training on self-development, strengthening your team. And your team is not just community, it's your family. Are you communicating? A lot of people are talking, but they're not listening. They're waiting for their opportunity to talk. So when you're communicating and you're working together, you see what the issue is and what the issue isn't. A lot of times today, we see a lot of people who are hearing the surface issues. So then 3 months or 6 months later, you're back with the same issue. So communication is the foundation for every family relationship, every community relationship, as well as every business relationship. And then I also have improving the process, customer service, team building, mentor versus a coach, time management, and record keeping. All of these courses are on my website as well. For those of you who are interested in taking action, not talking about it, but actually taking action in what they're going to do. And I also have, after you have, if you've already passed this process or you're looking for a mentor or a coach, I also have that book, Mentor vs. Coach, Things to Consider Before You Hire a Mentor or a Coach. You have to consider whether their method of training will work for you, because we all have different learning styles. From my experience as a teacher, some of us are visual, some of us are auditory, and some of us are hands-on, and many of us are a combination. So you have to know if you can actually learn from them. Another thing that you need to know from them is, do they have the experience for which they are saying that the product that they're teaching? There are a lot of curators who they give information, but they don't know the things that aren't documented. And in order for you to truly move into it, you need to know those things that working within the industry that aren't documented, as well as you move forward in your process to progress. And then you also need to know if do they speak the language of the industry. That's also one of the things that you need to be aware of. So it also helps you to decipher clues with a skilled curator versus a mentor or a coach. So those are the resources that I have designed for those who are serious in doing self-assessment, implementation, elimination, so they can progress in their process to progress. So I want to thank all of you for listening, and for those who don't just want to talk about making a positive difference, but actually want to take action in making a positive impact in their community. And for those, if to learn more, as stated, you can go to ShauneilleSmith.com. Like me, follow me on social media, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, because I'm sitting in my car in the UK actually, but I am based in Houston full time. I live in Houston now. I grew up in Nigeria. I went to university in the UK, and I took 4 of my 6 degrees in the UK. 2 of them concerned African studies, one from Oxford and one from the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London. I say that because it has relevance to some of the themes you're going to see in the book I'm going to talk about. I lived in the UK for 15 years, and then work took me to Houston, where I live full time now. I have won writing prizes over the years, but for serious topics, African development, African security, and all that. But this is my first book of fiction. Some of the stories have been published already in other journals and magazines, but this is my first book of fiction. And I hope you guys will pick it up and enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. The book is titled The Condom and Other Stories. The title is provocative. That is done on purpose, but the book is in no way erotica or similar adult fiction. It's just humorous literary fiction. As one of our reviews have said, there are great stories, and the title makes for a fabulous, if sometimes word conversation starter. So read on trains at your own peril. It's a fresh, I would want to believe, collection of short stories about relationships and encounters, love, life, and laughter among contemporary Black people in Africa and in diaspora. It's filled with colorful characters, if you will pardon the pun. There's a lot of snappy dialogue, and of course, quite a few twists. One thing that comes across in the book, and I didn't intend it that way, it was something that after we'd written it, I suddenly realized, was that it has very strong women characters. Even when they're not the main character, my women are very strong women. And nowhere are there any stronger characters in the whole book than in the story called The Matter. The Matter is a serious story. It's one of the few stories in the book that you would say is not a laughing matter. It's the story of two teenage suicide bombers. It's told from each of their perspectives as they prepare to take the final walk towards what they're going to do. One of them has been brutally coerced into doing it. The other one actually volunteered. There are also other perspectives from which the story is told. The perspective of the hunters who are trying to stop bombings. They've been conscripted by the government to guard places of worship to stop bombings. And then finally, the perspective of the person who planned the suicide bombings and sent out the girls. In addition to the strong women, I try to keep my dialogue real. I wanted it to be the way Africans or African Americans would talk. I didn't want my dialogue to be proper English, classical English. I wanted it to come across as real. I wanted you to read it and feel that you are actually listening to real people. This also meant sprinkling the dialogue with non-English terms, to give flavor, urban slang, African vernacular words, and so on and so forth. But each of these terms is explained immediately, so you don't have to look for translation. It's translated right there, so you understand immediately. But I try to keep dialogue real. One of my most enjoyable stories to write, therefore, in keeping dialogue real, was a story called Headstrong. Headstrong is a tongue-in-cheek reply to Birdsong, a story by Chimamanda Adichie, the famous Nigerian writer. Adichie, for anyone who's read her books, and she's written quite a lot, Americana, Half of a Yellow Sun, Purple, Hibiscus. She's also a strong feminist. Adichie is a very powerful writer. And all that power is concentrated in this short story, which for me is her best work of all, Birdsong. It's about the mistress of a sugar daddy in Lagos, ruminating over her failed relationship with the man. Like I said, Adichie is a feminist, so the story is told exclusively from the mistress's point of view. The story is, for me, just dripping with innuendo, it's dripping with literary genius and powers. So after my 100th time or so of reading that story, I got to thinking, but what will the sugar daddy be saying? Because as Adichie herself keeps telling us, it's in one of her best speeches on the internet, there are dangers to a single story. So we've had the story from the mistress's point of view. What about the sugar daddy? So I said, why not write it? And I set out writing it. But I was very careful. I didn't want to try and match Adichie's power. Of course, I couldn't, of writing serious literature. So instead, I went to the other side of the spectrum. I wrote it from a very humorous perspective. I wanted to write it in first person as the sugar daddy would talk to, his boys in the club, telling them the story. And that's how that story is written. It's not in formal English at all. One other thing, trying to do a reply to literary fiction, to a piece of work already done, a composition. It took me back to growing up in the 90s, the age of the great rap disc clapbacks. One of the most powerful of which, of course, was Tupac's Hit 'Em Up. His reply to Biggie and the entire Bad Boy crew. Those were things that formed my young years coming up. And I was like, this is really a clapback. But I wasn't going to diss or do anything like that. Chimamanda's character, no. I thought it more of another diss song of the 90s. Sporty Thieves did a reply to TLC's I Don't Want No Scrubs. That was No Pigeons, I think. And that was very humorous. So I wanted something humorous that people could read the two stories and laugh. So I did Headstrong, and I'll read an excerpt from my own story, Headstrong, and it will give you a flavor. This is the book we're talking about. This is my book, The Condom. I'll read an excerpt from Headstrong, the beginning, where the sugar daddy has just come across the story by Chimamanda in the New Yorker. And it starts, "If I tell you now that I choked on my burger, you will say that these poor children have come again. But if it were you, Uncle, sitting across from your madam, you see the name of your side chick in print, would that one alone not make you fear? Then you see what she has written about. Oh my God, that she had an affair with this big man in Lagos. Chai, this is in the New Yorker. Can you imagine? Not one nonsense blog or all those Tatafo sites that serious people don't read. The New Yorker. The devil is a liar." She called it bird song. Those birds clearly made as much of an impression on her as I had. The fruit trees attracted them to the compound on Victoria Island. After sex, we would lounge in the veranda on the first floor, barely dressed, watching the birds frolic. Naturally, their chirping became a soundtrack of sorts to the affair that she chronicled. Make no mistake, she left clues, left, right, and center about the lover's identity, but she did not drop a name. That was very important. I serve a living God, my bro. My mood just started to lift like that. And so it continues in that vein. He's talking to his boys, and a lot of people who've read it have found it very amusing, to say the least. Language, very important. So you have in Martyr that I talked about, you have an example of me sprinkling the story with African words for flavor. And we'll pick up an excerpt from where one of the girls is about to start making her work. And we pick up the excerpt from the hunter who is guarding the place of worship. And this is his words. He's telling us a story. Kanalafia, one of the women says, asking how I'm doing. Her voice is clear and sweet, the words slipping sonorously off her tongue. Lafia Lao, I reply, assuring her that I am fine. I nod to indicate that she and her companion should enter. Yaya Matanka explains the companion as they pass me. She is asking about my wife. I saw the playfulness in their eyes. They're about my age and being mischievous, guessing I am not married. I shake my head as much to clear it as to dismiss these mami water. I have to stop this. I have to be very careful. The thing is, I'm sure of where I stand with the wild animals we hunt in the bush. Their first reaction is always to flee. But the ones that I'm looking for here, Babu. They look death in the face and smile and say, welcome. And it is difficult to know them until it is too late. Only by the will of the Almighty, the merciful and the beneficent, have a few of them been stopped in time. When their hijabs were removed, everyone saw that their hair was pulled back tight and tied at the back. Usually, you only see hair done like that when Ne Aikatawa, the undertaker, is preparing a woman's corpse for burial. Sanu, I reply, forcing my mind back to the task at hand. In Asanka, she paused as she passes. I shake my head. She said she likes me. The black quality lining her eyes made her almost look mystical. My heart makes jiggy jiggy a bit before I order it to stop. Nagode, I remember to say thanking her, but not bothering to turn back. So language was big, but something else that was big for me as well was that I wanted to tell our stories, Black stories, as just stories of every day, stories of us just being like everyone else. And I say this because if you read a lot of contemporary African literature in literary fiction, you will see what we call post-colonial tropes in academia, post-colonial tropes, and that is that there's a lot of angst to start with, and it is always situated against, the white world, the other world. It's always a comparison, it's either complaining about maltreatment or it's setting off our cultures against those other cultures to show contrast, whether in disfavor or favorably. There's a lot of that in literature, even in the literature I adore, like Chimamanda Adichie's work. There's a lot of that. And I've kept thinking, that is fantastic. I'm not knocking it. But why don't we just tell our own stories like people tell their stories, from ourselves? It's set within ourselves, against us. And I wanted to tell funny stories, jokey stories. We shouldn't always be taking ourselves serious, I think. It's not. We should also be able to talk at ourselves, look at ourselves and laugh. So you hardly see any of these contrasts done in the book. Where I actually did it was a story that I set in Houston, which is called A Pot of Soup. And it's about a Nigerian living in Houston. He's lived in Houston for a long time. Call him Nigerian American if you like, but he grew up in Nigeria and he has an African American girlfriend. And so in that story, I examine a lot of our stereotypes between Africans and African Americans, and I make fun of them. I'm laughing at the stereotypes of African Americans. I'm laughing at the stereotypes of Nigerians. I'm laughing at the stereotypes of Congolese. So I bring all the stereotypes together in the story, and I try to make fun of them. Let me read an excerpt for that. Our main character's name is Buchi, and his girlfriend is Shaniqua. So Shaniqua has traveled for work. She's the flight attendant. She's traveled for work, and Buchi feels like some Nigerian food. And so he says, Buchi would be the first to acknowledge that the object of his desire did give off a strong smell. If you cooked a pot of Nigerian soup or stew, the smell seeped into the walls and hung heavy in the air for days, so that air fresheners, made with less formidable tasks in mind, were of little relief. Many of the Nigerian homes he knew in Houston smelled permanently of the food. Open-plan living spaces with shuttered windows providing a potent incubator for vigorous aromas. The inhabitants rarely noticed, although they would comment heartily on the smell of garlic whenever they visited the residence of an Indian friend. Today, however, Buchi yearned for Nigerian food. Shaniqua was not expected back until Tuesday. Since the cooking and imbibing were going to be a one-off, he would have 3 days to get rid of any telltale smells so that his girlfriend would be none the wiser. Shaniqua worked for Southwest Airlines. The first time he'd addressed her as an air hostess, she flew into a rage. It was flight attendant, she yelled at him, like a brain surgeon, a professional. The term he'd used, she said, was whack and retarded, and put her on par with ratchet hoochies up in them clubs with scraggly ass weaves, who did nothing other than welcome patrons with a smile and make sure they were suitably seated. The offensive description would permanently be exercised from his vocabulary when Shaniqua nearly scratched his head off at a subsequent slip of tongue. Buchi smiled. His girl was drama. Little things set her off. His friends who met her said she was the reason they would never mess with Akata, African-American women, talk less of dating them. Their wahala was too much. Buchi smiled some more. If Akata were feisty, it was in a way he found all too appealing. Shaniqua's combustibility was a far cry from the submissiveness of African women his age, which he saw through from miles away and positively loathed. He rarely passed up an opportunity to call the Marriage Material Act put a ring on it 419. Shaniqua was a handful, but he was crazy about her. Not only was she stunning, but her dress sense rendered provocative and understatement. Her friends called her Black Barbie, a nickname Buchi poo-pooed as not doing his bootylicious girl justice. He would always say that her body must have been made on a Monday when he was at his creative best after having rested on Sunday. But you like that Shanika had no issues with her complexion. She was dark and proud, did not use toning creams, and thought crazy the African women who did. What's wrong with you all? She would ask Buchi, laughing at before and after pictures of yet another Nigerian woman who'd had skin whitening treatments. Buchi always stifled the urge to say, wait till you see some Congolese men. Shanika had also begun to lean towards her natural hair, wearing afros and forswearing straighteners. Gone were all the Malaysian and Brazilian 100% human hair extensions. And in their place, the washing, blow dry, and styling at Afro CC, the salon on Pollard Broadway that only did natural hair. Shanika had never tried African food, and Buchi was not about to broach the subject. Before her, he briefly dated another Akata Makwesha, whom he'd taken to the Cameroonian restaurant West Balfort to sample the signature grilled croque and plantains. She found it all too peppery and been repulsed by the sight of the head, the fish having been served whole as was customary. Makwesha was not nearly as bougie as his current girlfriend, so he had never bothered to raise a similar experience with Shanika. Please go out and get the book. I assure you'll be entertained.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abayomi Abiru. You can call me Yomi also. So I'm joining in from Lagos, Nigeria. And I want to first and foremost say a big thank you for the opportunity to you've given me today to showcase my recent piece of work titled The City Knows My Name. Apart from being an author, I also work as a cybersecurity analyst here in Nigeria. This I've been doing for close to 8 years now. But right from my days in secondary school, in high school, I've always loved poetry. I've always written things on my notes, written things on pieces of paper, depending on what comes into my mind. So the rationale behind my book, The City Knows My Name, was born out of, because in recent times, like for example, in Nigeria, for example, in recent times, we've had quite a number of people, friends and family, immigrating to different countries around the world, and everyone sharing a very common experience about living in a new land and not being able to fit into the cultures and the things there generally. I, for one, I did my first and second degree in London. And I remember back then when I moved into London for the first time, I found it really hard meeting new people. I found it really hard also getting used to the new life. And I also missed my family. I also missed my family and friends back home. So it took time before I got used to the new system and the way to do things, and trying as much as possible not to be homesick. So I'm back, and when I was done with my university, I came back to Nigeria, started working also, and I've got friends that have traveled also. So many times when I speak to many of them, they talk to me about how lonely it can be living abroad and how they miss home, and how they wish they could come back home. I don't know. It's just been mixed feelings from so many people. So that what brought up the idea behind the City Knows My Name. It tries to encapsulate all the various experiences that people go through when they travel, and how they feel, and how they feel, and also how ways they can try to integrate into a new society and make the best of wherever they find themselves. So the City Knows My Name is a poetry collection of over 41 poems, and today I'll be reciting like 2 of them, so you just have an idea of what I'm talking about. This evening I'll be reading on one of my poems called "Let Me Go Home," and here it goes. I've been talking to these walls since I got here, but the only reply I get with echoes. Every evening after work, emptiness walks me down to the bedroom. The portraits hanging on the wall stare at me like a stranger. This place is really unfamiliar. I am tired of this crazy company of silence and boredom. Mama looks at me from one of the portraits with pity. Perhaps she hears my kitchen complaints of choking and smoke. This cooker always burns my food. Maybe this is what freedom means. A longing to return home, to return to the chores of my mama, the yelling of my papa, my brother jumping over me, the deep love of a family and a deep love of a family. That's one of it. And I also have one, which is the headline title of the book, The City Knows My Name, which goes like this. Windrush and train of memories lumber into town. A busty woman holds a bubbly child against her bosom. The sights of this city, my city, the city knows my name. I hope the food stall on the corner still has that magic spell, the smell of the well-cooked soup, drifting through the mass human toil. The fragrance of the city still holds me bound. Does this city still know my name? Are those houses still the way they are? Those invisible seams the seam to divide the affluent from the middle class. Do the homeless still camp under the center bridge? Fix my city or keep my name out of your mouth. So that's like two of some of the poems that are in my book. So I think that's it basically. So if you want to get access to my new collection, I can see that we're running out of time already. So I'm trying to make it as brief as possible. So if you want to get access to any of my books, you can check it on Amazon, so Barnes and Noble. I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say this has been an amazing experience. I've been like taking notes from all the authors that have been sharing everything. So I really appreciate all of everything that you all shared. And I appreciate you, McKinnon, for inviting me to this platform. This is amazing. So along with me being an author, I'm also a robotic engineer here in North Carolina for a healthcare company. And I'm also the founder and the CEO of a company called STEM Plug, where I connect individuals into STEM, and also I have opportunities for the youth in the area, getting them into STEM. So with all that being said, how exactly did I get to the point where I'm at now? I'm originally from North Philadelphia, to be exact. And, growing up, I really didn't have any drive or motivation to really do much in life. I didn't really have any positive role models in my life, and it was really a struggle for me. Growing up in high school, I graduated with a 1.8 GPA. And my mother, who's actually, my book is actually dedicated to, got me an opportunity, and I came to St. Augustine's University in Raleigh, North Carolina, at HBCU. So when I got to college, just kind of seeing my mom struggle and on payment plans and such really inspired me to, continue to go along, and just, gave me that drive to continue. So I graduated back in 2015 with a degree in biology. And, during that time, when I first graduated, I started to write short stories. And I've been writing for the past about, since 2015. And I was just sitting on all these stories for the longest. But then when 2019 came, I went through a couple life-changing situations. I got in a car accident where I almost lost my life, and just other family situations that just kind of showed me, I gotta stop sitting on this content and stuff that I might have that might can actually make an impact on people, especially me being, where I'm from, and people just seeing an example of, stuff that I'm doing. So with that being said, that's kind of how my book, Diversed in STEM, came about. And Diversed in STEM is a children's book for children's ages 6 to 12, just kind of inspiring them to go into all areas of STEM. And with Diverse in STEM, it's a storyline book of 10 different children. Actually, when you look at the book, all of their names actually spells out diverse to N. So it's kind of a, hidden gem right there. But I wanted to create a book that, not only shows children from all different areas and backgrounds and different possibilities that they can go into in STEM, but also just led by a teacher, an African teacher to be exact, from Ghana, that just, is leading them and helping inspiring them to go into different areas that they may not even thought about. So this book was really, based upon my life, and I really wanted to just, bring this all about. So kind of going into my book, like I said, my book has been dedicated to my mother, Gilliam, just for inspiring me throughout my life and just, being that kind of like a catalyst for me to help me to get where I'm at today. My book is also dedicated to anyone that has struggled with self-belief in themselves. And I just wanted to, let anybody know who, reads my book, if you have a vision, anything can be done with self-determination. And I honestly believe that when we have a vision and different ideas, we have to just go for it. You never know the impact of the work that you might actually make on somebody. So kind of going into the beginning of my book, like I said, my book has 10 different characters, 10 different children. So it's Domingo, we have Ichiro, we have Emily, we have Victoria, we have Richie, who was actually me as a child. We have Sanavi, we have Iya, we have Danny, we have Ian, and we have Nina. So all of these children in this book, they all have different personalities. And with all these different personalities, the teacher, Miss Joy, actually, helps them bring out their creativity and kind of inspires them to, different personality qualities that we might look down upon. She actually enhances them and brings out all this imagination in the children and helps them imagine themselves in different areas of STEM. So kind of starting off in the first section of my book, it's just going into, did you know that STEM is involved in all aspects of our lives? So STEM exactly being science, technology, engineering, and math. So STEM is not only a group of concepts put together, but it's actually a teaching philosophy that integrates these 4 important components. So this first section just kind of goes into, what exactly is STEM and, what are the different areas of STEM. So my next section kind of goes into looking at personalities. So I have an intro statement of, did you know that everyone is born with a distinct personality type and unique characteristics? So me, for example, I tend to maybe pick up certain qualities. It might take me a while to pick them up. But with that being said, if it might take me a long time to learn something, this is actually enhancing my creativity. So Ms. Joy in the book does a great job of, certain qualities that these students have. She's actually, helping them and helping just enhancing those so that the students can gain that self-confidence in themselves. So, and I feel as though this is very important, especially in our school system today, of where, there's certain qualities that our kids and our students have, of where teachers, can actually, not look down upon these certain qualities, but actually enhance them and make the children feel better about themselves. And we're teaching our students of, just helping students to be able to think critically is a very important aspect that I feel as though is missing in our school system today. So my next section going into after that just basically goes into, after talking about all the personalities of all the different children in the book, we kind of go into STEM careers. So now that all the children have kind of, shared their personalities and gotten to know each other, the teacher, Miss Joy, now goes into different areas of STEM that their personality qualities might relate to, of areas that they can go into when they get older. So my introduction statement here is just, did you know that STEM jobs are expected to grow by 8% this decade alone? So with all these areas and STEM being all aspects of our lives, it's important for, you know, our children to just understand that certain qualities that they might have today, they might be able to use that to do great things in the future and just help us, you know, in the world and just innovate different things. Finally, my next section is just going into collaboration. And I feel as though collaboration is very important. And my introduction statement just goes into saying, did you know collaboration can help form deeper and creative thoughts towards a specific subject? So with this section, this is just kind of going into, you know, all these students may see themselves and imagine themselves in different areas of STEM, but not only, you know, you might be in a different area of STEM, but at the end of the day, you might be collaborating with someone else. You know, for me, for example, in my career as a robotic engineer, you know, I collaborate with a lot of different people such as different scientists, different data engineers, stuff like that. So you're always going to be collaborating with someone. And just because you have a different personality type or skill doesn't mean that you can't work together and create something that much more powerful. Yeah, and then finally, the end of my book just kind of goes into, you know, just exploring different areas, different STEM careers. So not only do I have different areas of STEM from A to Z of just different details that one can go into, I also have a list of different qualities that, you know, might be related to this specific area to help brainstorm. So that is my book right here. Again, Diverse in STEM. This is the first book of the series. So I will be having more books coming out under this series, as well as I will be having this year actually, I will be having a hardback come out, and this hardback book will come out with and have some like extra STEM activities as well. And I will be releasing a coloring book this year as well. So those are what I have to do with here. So I appreciate your time, McKinnon, and thank you.